In this video, I'm going to show you what to look for when you're looking at a storage facility and whether to be able to tell if it has value add potential or not. Hey, my name is Alex. My business partner Caleb and I own about 700 storage units right now. We started buying probably a year and a half ago. We have 5 facilities and we are 100% in storage. All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about the big picture of value add and storage. We're going to talk about things like occupancy, marketing, rates that the current facility has that you may be looking at versus their competitors, the location, is it nice or is it in a low income area, and also the operations of the business. And finally, I'm going to wrap this video up with some quick numbers to show you if you did X to add X amount of net operating income to the facility, what would that do to its value? All right, so first thing, let's talk about the big picture of value add in storage. What does that mean? Well, our background is flipping houses, and obviously to flip a house, you have to buy a house that's not nice. You have to put work into it, construction into it, and then it becomes nice, right? That's value add. You bought it for 50 grand, you put 25 in it, now it's worth, $130,000 or whatever your example is, right? Well, with storage, value add doesn't always mean swinging a hammer. Sometimes value add means literally just raising the income and maybe cutting the expenses where you can, right? Or maybe it's you have to raise the expenses, but by doing so, you raise the income that plus more, and ultimately you added value. So in commercial real estate, we need to keep in mind that adding value doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't have to be paint, gutters, signs, stuff like that. Adding value can be strictly on the P&L. It can be strictly bringing a facility that's currently doing $10K a month right now to $13K, right? And what does that do for its value? So value add is really important. It is one of 2 of our top risk mitigation strategies whenever we're purchasing multi-million-dollar facilities, because the way that we look at it, we can get creative on the financing, and we'll have more videos on that later. But if we're, let's say, 100% financed into a facility, right? But it's doing 10K a month and we can force it to do 13 or 15K a month. Well, let's say it takes us 6 months to be able to do that. Once we hit those numbers, we're no longer 100% financed on that facility, right? Our debt stayed basically the same, slight pay down in that 6 months. But the appraised value, or the value that another investor would more than likely purchase that facility from us, just tremendously grew. Why? We didn't swing a hammer. We didn't do anything. All we did was raised the net operating income of the business, right? And that thus makes us not 100% financed anymore when you're looking at the debt versus the actual value of the facility. So, it's really important. Yes, we want to say that we have all this equity. That's great, but it's really important to also make sure and save your butt, right? Maybe times get hard and you need to pull a line of credit on something. Well, you are going to have a lot easier time of doing that if your facility is making more money. The bank is going to say, yes, we agree it's worth more than what you paid for it or what the debt is that's on it. All right, so keep that in mind. With storage, it's not always swinging a hammer. Sometimes it's just the P&L. It's just making the income happen, okay? Another thing that I wanted to hit on real quick is I got a phone call earlier today, actually. An individual was, asking me what I thought about a storage facility, saying, hey, how much should these units, what should this rent for? How much should these units go for? With storage, it's important to keep in mind that I don't like to talk in terms of units, right? Because a unit rents for a lot of different prices. A 5x10 rents for a way different price than our boat storage of 14x50s, right? Also, I don't like to talk in terms of unit sizing compared to geographical locations, because a 10x10 in our market may rent for way more or way less than a 10x10 in Miami, Florida, right? So there's not really a good way to talk in terms of units on that. This is why a lot of times I like to look at cap rate when we're evaluating a facility, but I'm also not one of those to say, well, I'm only going to buy something that's an 8 cap, and if you send me something that's not an 8 cap, or I look at your facility and it's not an 8 cap, I'm not going to buy it, right? Because it's deeper than that, right? I mean, cap rate is kind of a good level of the playing field, but also at the same point in time, it's different for everybody. And what really matters is what is the capital, what really matters for us, I should say. What is the capital that's going into it, and what is the return on that capital? What does that look like from a value add standpoint? And also, what does the debt structure look like on it as well? And so what I mean by that is we typically look at cap rate. We don't really look at units or unit sizes or price per door or anything like that. What we want to do is we want to say, okay, I'm fine with buying something at a 6 cap, which maybe some people would say, no way would I do that, right? But because I see that this owner doesn't market correctly, rates are too low, blah, 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 extra value add strategies here, there, revenue generation strategies, you know, in 6 months time, 1 year time, I can make this property, I can force it to a 9 cap or a 10 cap, right? Then all of a sudden it becomes a deal where it's like, oh man, I wish I could have bought a deal as good as yours. Well, it's like you looked at the same property, but you just looked at cap rate and said, no, I don't want to buy it. But you didn't look at the value add strategy to make that a 9 cap or a 10 cap, right? So again, we look at cap rate, but it's also not like a deal maker breaker for us. Value add is really the deal maker breaker for us. So again, I just want to focus on real quick, looking at my notes here. Think about when, you know, I get a lot of calls all the time. Hey, what do you think this property is worth? And I'm like, look, it's worth a different number to everybody, right? Maybe you can set up your financing different and you can get a better return on that than somebody else could, so you're willing to pay more for the property. Maybe you see a value add strategy here that somebody else doesn't, and so it's worth more to you, right? Or vice versa to that. So again, it comes back to be, what is the property worth for you? You know, the things that we look at is, can we add value to it? What does the debt structure look like to delay the trigger on it? And then what capital needs to go in and what is the return on that capital? And hey, if that works, if we like those numbers, if it's a property that we're comfortable with, we are 100% going to move forward with it. All right, so enough big picture talk. Let's talk about some specific items that we look for whenever you're saying, can I add value to this self-storage facility or not? Number one thing is going to be occupancy. So if we look at a facility and I can see a 5-year history of 95+% occupancy, that is a flag just sticking up in the air saying, I don't charge enough for my units that I'm renting out, right? A lot of owners that we talk to, that we buy properties from, even say, yeah, I think the better thing to do is have cheap rates and always stay full. It's like, okay, that's fine. That's your opinion. Not going to say it's wrong, but for me, that's a great thing to say. We can make this property make more money. We can make this facility do in $10K a month, make it do $13K or whatever those numbers are, right? You know, it's funny. You can take a facility and you'd have to do the math on your own, but try this in an example when you're underwriting a facility. You can say, okay, these are the rates and we're at 100% occupancy. But what if I bump all the rates by X and I drop to 85% occupancy? What does my revenue look like, right? And chances are you actually can make more money with less customers at 85% than you did on cheaper rates at 100%. And the great thing there is that now you had 15% of your units open up. So now you can really target those customers that are in that market looking for storage units that are willing to pay more, right? I mean, in the same exact, within a 10-minute period, we'll get a phone call and say, you know, how much do you charge for a unit? $100, right? Oh, that's just crazy. There's no way I'd pay that. But then 5 or 10 minutes later, somebody will call and say, how much do you charge for a unit? $100. Oh, that's cheap. Are you kidding me? Can I get 2 of them? I mean, it blows my mind, right? So it's like really that first group of customers, those aren't our customers. They're just not. We're targeting for those second group of customers, right? And of course, this is assuming that your facility has got the quality to be able to get those customers. So again, high occupancy, number one sign that there's room to move up on those rates. The second thing that we look for whenever we're deciding if the facility has room for value add potential or not is the level of marketing, or maybe lack thereof marketing, that the current facility owner is doing. So let's take, for example, if you have the facility with high occupancy and zero marketing. They don't have a website, they're not running ads, they just have a sign out front that says vacant units. That is driving the nail even further to say there's value add potential here, because not only are they staying fully occupied, which means their rates are cheap, but they're also not actively seeking out additional customers in a market where more than likely there are facilities seeking out additional customers. And so by marketing heavily. And so if we see something like that to where they don't have marketing in place, that is a tremendous sign of there's going to be value add potential here. Now you got to keep in mind, you can't buy the facility, raise the rates, expect to get the same customer or expect to get better customers and not do any marketing, just like how they are. You need to put in good plans to do your marketing. You need to have good Google My Business profiles, good websites, high quality pictures and videos to go along with that. Maybe run some Google marketing ads, maybe some bandit signs around, making sure that your facility is visible from a main road, things like that. But focus on making sure that you can market your facility to those high paying customers out there. And that's going to be something that you can really add a lot of value to your facility. So by taking a look at the occupancy and by taking a look at the marketing, we can really have a better understanding to look at the third thing, which is rates. We want to be able to understand what are the rates of this facility charging versus the rates of maybe the closest competitor or the competitors in that same category, right? Sometimes it can be a little bit difficulty if we're looking at a facility that is maybe Class C versus comparing that to the rates of a facility that is Class A. You want to be careful about saying, well, Class A is getting 50% higher rates than me, I can charge that same thing at my Class C. Not always the case depending on your location. So be a little bit conservative on that. But we want to dive in and do the research of what are the competitors doing in that area. Are all the competitors in that area like Extra Space and Public Storage, where they're putting tons of money into their marketing and customer acquisition? Or are they mom and pop storage facilities that have been doing the same thing that this current facility owner is doing, where they're not really marketing, they keep their rates the same, they have high occupancy, things like that, right? So, sometimes you actually have to secret shop. I think it's, commonly referred to in the industry. And that means, when you look at maybe there's 5 surrounding facilities, none of the facilities have websites. So you're literally going to have you or somebody else call the facilities, act like a customer, try to kind of figure out what are they charging for units. Do they have any units available? If you see that they're charging way less prices, but they have no vacancies, then it's not necessarily a red flag that they're charging the cheap prices like that. Because look, if you buy your facility and you increase your rates a little bit, your customers may say they're going to move out, but when they call the 5 facilities around them to move out, they realize there's nothing else to be had. So they really can't go anywhere, right? So we can be a little bit careful and conservative about that. But yeah, secret shop some of your facilities. Get an understanding of like what your average rate per unit type is at the facility that you're looking at, and try to get an understanding of what the average rate is for that same unit type in surrounding facilities, and also get an idea of the occupancy of those. The fourth thing that we'll look at and take into consideration if there's value add potential on this property is the location. So if we're, again, speaking about value add, that is raising the income of the property. Typically that means charging higher rates, finding new ways to create revenue, and increasing the rates of the current customers that are already there. But we need to take into account the location. If this is right next to the country club, chances are you can probably get by with some of those rate increases and have very little move out, right? You're more than likely dealing with a customer base that is not worried about $10 extra per month, but they don't want to have to go spend a Saturday moving all their items out of their 10 by 10, 10 by 20 storage unit. Now, if this is a facility that's located in a lower income area of town, you want to be a little bit more careful about those rate increases and about your outlook on, well, 10 by 10 average rate is here, I can get it here, right? You want to take into consideration what is going to be your customer base for that area. Most of the time for us, we are in more rural markets, and so we're probably looking at a 3 to 5 mile radius is where 90% of our customers come from. Whether in that 3 to 5 mile radius they either live or they work there, that's typically where our customers are coming from. So look at that radius for your facility. Is that a high income area with nice homes and businesses and things like that? or is that on the lower income side of town? It's going to be able to dictate, okay, the difference between, can I get by with a $5 rate increase, or can I get by with a $20 rate increase? Or think about that in percent of the unit types that you're looking for there. And finally, another piece that we look for when we're evaluating if a facility has value add potential to it or not is the operations of the business. A lot of older storage owners think that there needs to be somebody there 8-10 hours a day answering the phones and walking the grounds and things like that. We all know that most of the time that person is just sitting there, maybe on their phone or looking at Pinterest, whatever the case may be, not generating revenue for the facility. Okay, so one thing that you can look at is say, well, this facility is currently paying 40, it's a larger facility, let's say they're currently paying 40 grand a year to somebody to be there, full-time, answering the phone calls, things like that. But do the math, work that backwards. See if you can get those phone calls answered from somebody off-site, whether that's yourself, whether that's a virtual assistant that you have in-house, which is the route that we take, or whether you hire out a third-party call center, right? See how you can get, everything that can be done from the computer and from the phone. See what number it's going to take to get that done for you, not on site. And then think about what it would take just to have a boots on the ground person go there maybe twice, 3 times a week walking the facility. A lot of times you're going to find that number comes in much under that salary that that person is currently getting paid. So that might be an opportunity to where you purchase the facility and slowly phase that person out, or maybe phase that person into just be the boots on the ground. A lot of times you could probably find that it's a blessing to them, right? Still pay them a good fair wage, but say, hey, look, rather than being up here 8 hours a day, you only need to be here, 1 hour on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and every other Saturday, or something along the lines like that. Again, big picture here, take a look at the operations of the business and figure out where you can cut expenses. Another thing, you'd be shocked, this kind of goes back and combines in with the marketing. Sometimes folks are still spending money to have their business listed in the newspaper ads and, like phone books and things like that. Things that to me, maybe I'm missing something, but just aren't super relevant and aren't the best use of revenue. So don't necessarily take their P&L and say, okay, this is all their expenses. That means it's got to be my expenses, right? You may be able to configure some things to actually make the business more efficient and make it to where you spend less while also making the business make more money. All right, so let's do a quick recap before we dive into these numbers. The things that we're looking for whenever we're first diving in and seeing, does this facility have value add potential to it or not? We're gonna look at things like occupancy. We're gonna look at things like marketing or lack thereof that the current facility owner is doing and the other facilities in the area. We're gonna look at things like, what are the rates compared to with our facility versus the competitors in the area? What are they doing to get customers and how much are they able to charge? Also take into consideration the quality of those other competitor facilities. The fourth thing that we're going to be looking at is going to be the location of the facility. Is it in a higher income or lower income area of town? And finally, the fifth thing that we like to take a look at is the operations of the business. Is there anywhere where we can make the business more efficient, thus spend less money while at the same point in time increasing the revenue that that facility produces? So as promised, here's going to be the number side of this video when we're talking about value add potential to a self-storage facility and what that can do for you. It's going to be a little bit interesting. I'm going to try to show you what I'm doing on my phone here, but point being is that I'm going to show you that this math can be really, really basic just to give you an understanding, and then from there you can dive deeper into your numbers in a Google Sheets or Excel sheet, something like this. So let's take, for example, if we have a facility, hopefully we can see this, we have a facility that's doing $10,000 per year in gross income times 12 months. That gives us our annual gross income. Okay, that's the number that we're looking for here. Now, we can typically operate a facility under 20% expense ratio, but if you have a really nice facility in an expensive area, it might be 30-35%, right? I'm just going to use 20% expense ratio for this video's sake. So we're going to take our income here minus our 20, and that is going to give us our net operating income for this facility as it sits today. Okay, that's $96,000 per year. So Your numbers are going to be different than mine. Point being is that we want to find gross revenue, subtract out your expenses, and ultimately get your net operating income of what the facility is going to produce in NOI for the way it sits right now, okay? Now, we're going to use a 7% cap rate in this example. You could argue back and forth what the cap rate's going to be. You use the cap rate that fits your area. I'm going to use 7% in this example. So with $96,000 of NOI per year, we're going to divide this by 7%. So that would say our facility is worth $1,371,000 the way it sits today. Okay, that gives us a base to where we're going to start at. Now, again, that was based on $10,000 per month. Let's say we had a well-executed business plan. We knew exactly how we're going to do this to get the facility to $13,000 per month. We're going to do the same thing. 13,000, okay, times 12. That gives us our annual gross revenue that this facility is bringing in. Okay, so 156,000. Now, your expense ratio is not necessarily going to stay the same. Maybe it takes you more money to create that extra income, right? Maybe you can actually do it for a little bit less money because you're producing more money, your expense ratio actually goes down. So don't assume your expense ratio will stay the same, but it might. And in this example, we're going to keep it the same. So 156,000 minus 20% for our expenses. That leaves us with $124,800, okay? Same cap rate, divided by 7%. Check that out. By raising the income of the facility $3,000 per month, this is what it does to our valuation. Now we're sitting at $1,782,000. I don't remember what that number was earlier, but I know it was like 1.3 something. But that is the power of just taking the facility and saying it does 10 grand a month now, and what would happen if I do 13 grand a month, right? How would I be able to create that additional $3,000 per month in revenue, right? There's a million different answers to that question. And there's, you're the one that's going to have to decide if it can actually be done or not. But again, when we're talking about valuations and we're talking about, okay, can I take this facility and buy it for 1.3 and force it to 1.7? If so, what is that math going to look like, right? Or I know I can add another $3,000 of revenue to this facility. What would that do to its valuation, right? Again, this is a very basic way of doing this, right? You don't just want to do this and then instantly take it to a bank and instantly take it to an investor. You want to dive deeper into this. You want to have an exact business plan on how you're going to increase the revenue of this facility, how you're going to accomplish that $3,000 per month. But hopefully this video serves you as a way to say, yes, it can be done, or maybe, no, it can't be done. We got to look at another deal.